Hi you guys, thank you so much for being here. Before we get started in the video, I'm just going to take a quick little minute here to explain to you who Michael is, the special guest in this video who will be sharing their experience based off of the topic of today's video. Michael Reyes is a 26-year-old life coach and an inspiring entrepreneur. He is a father of a beautiful 6-year-old daughter, and he is also part of an amazing team business called Altercall. He is a community manager and facilitator and now a sales representative. But if you know anyone or if you yourself have gone through what today's topic is about, please take notes. There is so much advice and motivational conversations going on within this video that I think you'd benefit. But thank you so much for being here. This is Readings of Luz again. See you soon. Alrighty.
We are recording.
Yeah. So, I know I gave an introduction already to who you are and what you're about, you know, just a few things, not to define you completely, but, you know, tell me a little bit more about yourself. This is the first time I'm meeting you today, you know, that, like, this is the first time I'm meeting you, so.
Well, based off of, you know, what you already know, you know, it's just, the things that I have to speak about, depending on whatever the topic is, like I personally have validation behind, you know, the ability to speak on these topics because of, you know, the personal situations I've been through, as you know, but, you know, obviously the audience doesn't know. You know, growing up, I suffered from, you know, sexual abuse. I was raped. I was, you know, forced to watch my mom go through some sexual trauma as well. You know, I was beaten a lot growing up. Didn't have really too much family to have my back or, you know, to care for me in ways that I felt like I needed the most. Spent a good majority of my very younger years homeless, trying to figure out where I would stay. I have slept behind, you know, trash cans and things like that in you know, random various complexes throughout the city. You know, I had a miscarriage when I was in my, you know, middle teens, which affected me quite a bit. You know, I grew up without my father. Every guy my mom dated was physically abusive, mentally, emotionally. A lot of my family were very manipulative in their own ways. You know, if it didn't offer them something out of it in return, then they wouldn't put the effort in. So I spent a lot of my life just being alone. I grew up with, you know, just a small handful of people who actually cared and offered services to me, but a good majority of my healing and the things that I have to offer, I had to find out on my own. Obviously, I did have some type of crutches, you know, growing up, like marijuana was one of them. Helped out in different ways. And then, you know, I was very fortunate to have a good experience when it comes to psychedelics, which did help a good majority of the way.
I mean, scientifically proven, you know, that
it is
cures depression.
And it is becoming something that's, you know, legalizing across the states. It's very slow, but, you know, they're starting with mushrooms in Colorado, and that's what started me on my journey. So, you know, it's just, I've had many, I've had a lot of experience in adversity and how to pick myself up from these things. I didn't have mentors growing up, but eventually down the line I was able to understand what a mentor was, because I wasn't able to understand that from the beginning. And, you know, as you know, one of my biggest mentors is Blair. He's just an amazing, aspiring author, entrepreneur, creator in every aspect, a healer. He's definitely a guru is what I would call him, or what I would look at him in my perspective. You know, he came after I did a good majority of my healing, but he came during the most important parts of my healing. So I've had, you know, my fair share of being dragged through the mud and being let down and, you know, hurt, destroyed in every possible way. And personally, I couldn't really pinpoint a valid subject or a valid thing, object, or anything in my life that helped me overcome all of these things. It was just, I truly feel like it was meant to be that way, and my heart is something that got me through it.
When you said that you know the person you look up to the most, you know, and you're working for currently is Ryan Blair, but you were already on your journey to healing, but you met him during the most important parts.
Yes.
Why would you say that you were already healing? What were some ways that you were helping yourself already with your healing?
Before Ryan came into my life, you know, obviously I have my best friend, my cousin. He's been someone I can always talk to, you know, and share my experiences with. I didn't always share everything with him because, you know, being someone who suffered from things like sexual abuse, you know, as humans, we're not very comfortable with speaking about those things right off the bat. It's something that terrifies us because of many different reasons: shame, guilt, depression, anxiety, judgment, whatever the case is. We refrain ourselves from releasing what is really going on the inside. So before I met Ryan, a lot of the things that I used was meditation, journaling. I've always been someone who's been very deep into poetry. So poetry was definitely a very, very big thing for me.
Poetry's awesome.
It's amazing, especially, you know, if you can resonate with it. Poetry was a good thing for me. I know it's not really a strong way or a positive way, you know, in most people's eyes, but for me, one of the things that helped, but I also had to learn from it, was sex, and it's because of the sexual pain that I had to, you know, endure. Growing up, being that way, you know, after I was hurt, I spent a good majority of my life walking around with hatred, with anger, with sadness, and like I said, I felt ashamed, I felt, you know, depressed, anxiety filled.
Some people even experience guilt.
I felt guilt as well. I felt guilt.
Like if it was their fault, you know, for some reason.
That's exactly what the case was. I spent a lot of my life blaming myself for what happened. I also blame myself for what happened to my mother, because around the time, you know, I was like anywhere from 10 to 13. And I grew up thinking that me being her oldest son, the only man in the house after my grandfather died, that it was my responsibility to protect my mother. And because I wasn't big enough or strong enough or smart enough, at least I felt that it's the reason why the things happened to us the way they did. So, you know, I would sit there calling myself a pussy or a bitch, or like whatever the names I could possibly, you know, useless, worthless, weak, whatever the case was. I spent a lot of my life, you know, accusing myself of that. But I also put up, exactly, but I also put up a wall that made it seem like I was a badass or like a tough person. Like I didn't want people to see that there was any sign of weakness within me, so that way, you know, every time someone tried to, you know, step up to me, I always just felt like I had to prove myself. And I built that around this fear of, if anybody knew that I was, you know, sexually abused, they would judge me, or they would pick on me because of it, or, you know, they would laugh at me because, you know, growing up, it's hard in this world. People make assumptions right off the bat, and there are evil people out there. I've had people in my life, you know, just make fun of me because of the situation, saying, you know, you like to sleep with men because of this, and, you know, or whatever the case was, and you know, it was hard. It was very hard. And, you know, in this world, we really don't have people to actually like give a helping hand. So a lot of the times, pretty much all the time, humans feel like we're alone. We feel like we have to do this journey of life by ourselves.
Bottling everything in.
Keeping everything held in and suppressed.
I think it's a little differently for women, and I think you can understand. But I can still completely agree, because it still does affect us. But for us, it was more like because we're women.
Yeah.
Because we're women, you know.
You're right. You know, women are like, they're already looked at as the species that complains too much, or like, you know, just is nagging. That, you know, a lot of relationships people go into, you know, I'm tired of you nagging me, or you know, giving me sass all the time.
Because they're a man.
Exactly.
I'm talking about machista. Machismo, like, what is that called?
Machismo.
Like when you're anti-feminism.
It's when a male is too hung up on their masculine side, they feel like, you know, there's things that aren't valid when it comes to women. But if you look throughout history, women have always had the struggle of trying to, you know, fight for their rights, fight for their belief systems, into showing the world that they can do exactly what men can do, if not better. So they've had to earn,
at least for the past 100 years.
Exactly.
Like that.
And they had to earn their way into working. They've had to earn rights to work, and you know, it's been that way. So throughout generations, men have grown up thinking that, you know, women's validation isn't worthy. So going back to, you know, male and female's perspective when it comes to sexual abuse, women don't talk about it because, you know, one, all of the same reasons why I didn't talk about it. They were scared. They had fear of judgment and anxiety and guilt. But they didn't talk about it because, you know, they didn't want men to think they were complaining, or they were showing a sign of weakness, or whatever the case was. And it's kind of the same for men, because we grow up with this characteristic that, or this belief system that we have to be macho, that we have to be the masculine energy no matter what. So it was a lot harder for, you know, because men do get sexually abused as well. It's
a real thing.
It's not as common as women, but it does happen. And being a man who has been through that, you know, those thoughts were there. Oh, because I'm a man, I can't talk about these things. Because, like I said from the beginning, I felt people would judge me, or I felt like, you know, they would laugh at me, or just the guilt within me, thinking that I had something that caused this person to inflict this pain. So when it comes to, you know, the spectrum of female and male, we have similarities when it comes to the reasons why we don't talk about these things compared to why we do. You know, it becomes a tough subject all around.
Yeah.
But over the years of experience and going through the things that I've gone through in life, the most important thing that I learned out of all of this was to talk about it. To talk about it. And a lot of people think that talking doesn't get you anywhere, that
makes you look weak.
It does. And
then it's also that fear of not trusting people, not being able to trust.
Having someone take what you can find them, what you can find in them, run with it and abuse it or disrespect your emotions.
Yeah.
Because it's common. People, you can sit there and have a heart-to-heart with someone, and you think that person cares, but at the end of the day, that person, you know, will go and, you know, turn that against you, use it against you, or they don't really take it into consideration because they're still dealing with their healing process. So, you know, like I said, growing up, I had my fair share of trials and tribulations, and, you know, things that I had to learn on my own. And the biggest factor was, you know, just facing everything head on. I had to look within during everything. Keep in mind, you know, I truly believe that it has a lot to do with me being a Pisces, being a very caring, loving, open person from the get-go. You would be surprised, you know, knowing all the things that I went through. And
break. We had to take a little pause there, but okay, we went deep into a lot, and a lot was said.
So being someone who suffered from, you know, sexual abuse and all of the other various things, you know, today's topic is sexual abuse. So being someone who suffered from that, the things that it caused me to do as a person when it comes to the negative spectrum is, you know, I spent every day obviously walking around with anger, with hatred towards the world, with fear that, you know, somebody else would hurt me or hurt my loved ones. I walked around thinking that I had to be this, macho human being. So I represented gangs growing up through middle school and high school, thinking that if I claimed this, people would back away from me and stop like trying to pick on me, or they would see my truest weakness, which was the pain that I was going through. So I'd sit there and I would do these things. I would run away from this core problem without facing the issues, and I would treat people with so much disrespect. I would not care about how my family talked to me or anything like that. I was always picking on other people in school myself because of the pain and the anger. I felt like I just felt like disrespecting the world. And then as I grew up, as I got older, my behavior started transitioning from being rude to people energetically or verbally to getting this obsession with sexual addiction. And it wasn't up until about 2 years ago that I realized how bad my problem was, because to me, I just thought I was, enjoying sex. I thought that was the case of my life. And I would go further into it. I got into things like BDSM and, just like daughter contracts and stuff like that. Like I got further into it thinking that, oh, I'm just sexually driven, and I would cause pain, in every scenario that I was in, or every situation, or every encounter that I had. And I didn't really care about the pain that I would cause. I'd walked around thinking that I was this almighty God because I had women on their knees begging for like my love, and I just would go through this experience over and over again thinking that I was gaining more and more power. And the reality of it was I wasn't gaining any power whatsoever. I was letting go of the authentic version of myself more and more. I was releasing who I was truly meant to be for a moment of happiness or excitement. And I didn't realize how toxic that was, or how toxic it could become. So I just kept going down this path. And then one day I went a little too far, and I made somebody cry, and it just wasn't in the moment. Obviously the things that led up to it were just like, in my mind, amazing. I thought, like I said, I was gaining power. But then when I saw that pain in that person's eyes, it made me step back physically. In the moment, I stepped back, and I had to take a deep breath, and I had to calm down to realize what it was that I was actually doing and how far I went with this pain. So I was just like, that day I realized something's obviously bothering me at the core. Like I thought I healed from not having my father, or from the way my family treated me. I thought I healed from everything else, but I never focused on the sexual abuse part of it. I ignored it in every aspect. It was always about trying to heal myself from the other things that I was going through. And I was so focused on the other things that I didn't think sexual trauma could like cause these things on a further level. So as I started going, questioning myself, why am I acting like this? Is this really who I am? Do I really like this power that I think I'm gaining just by having people like begging for me? I really truly thought I was some type of God in the making. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. And as I sat down and I started asking myself questions, I got into meditation around that time, and then I got into yoga, and yoga started getting me to start actually noticing where I wasn't showing love to my body inside and out. So I'm very grateful for yoga because it's a self-love practice. And little did I know, practicing forms of self-love would eventually arise the problems to the surface, so I can see what it is that I'm struggling with. And then, like I said, I got into yoga, I got into meditation, started journaling. I wasn't really a huge journaler. I was always a writer, but I wasn't someone who journaled consistently. And then one year came where I just felt like enough was enough. I couldn't I couldn't see myself drowning in this addiction anymore. I couldn't see myself suffering as far as I was. I was tired of it. And I just realized that, you know, to me, I thought I was craving another touch. I thought I was craving somebody else, but I wasn't. I was trying to fill that void of the pain that I was feeling on the inside. So like I said, once I started questioning things, answers started arising, and it wasn't up until about 2 years ago that I realized that maybe this stems from my sexual abuse. And this thought didn't come to me naturally. I was on a psychedelic. I was on LSD at the time. And as I sat there in my room alone with my headphones on, just had my eyes closed, and out of nowhere, the memory came from my core, just straight to the, you know, to the front of my brain, to my third eye. And all I could hear was, "You're this way because of what you suffered through." And it was like my inner voice telling me, like, there's nothing wrong with you. This isn't who you really are. You're still trying to understand where your pain is stemming from. So I was having that one-on-one conversation with myself internally, and I woke up the next day realizing.
How long ago was this?
This was about 2 years ago.
Wow.
2, almost 3. And I realized, you know, the next morning that I was being too hard on myself, and I didn't even realize that. So once I realized that I was being too hard on myself, I finally went and I opened up about it. You know, I was so terrified, I was so scared, I was shaking, I was cold, I had goosebumps all over. Like, I was just so worried that if I admitted this out loud, everyone would shame me. Everyone would look at me differently. Or, most importantly, everyone would sympathize. They would try to show me sympathy in return, and that's not what I wanted. I didn't want somebody to feel sorry for me. I didn't want somebody to try to offer me, like, you know, an apology for somebody else's actions, because it's not their responsibility for that apology. So I finally went, and I've known my cousin for almost 27 years, 28, something like that, and I've never mentioned this to him, and he's somebody I've talked to on a deep level about everything. He knows everything about me. So then I finally opened up to him, and you know, his response was silent. You know, him and his fiance at the time were debating whether they wanted to keep me in their life, because they didn't understand the actions that I was making and the person that I was becoming. So then once I had that heartfelt conversation with them, and I told them how I was really feeling, they were able to take a step back and to understand who Michael really was, who Michael truly was. He wasn't somebody that, just because of the actions that I was making, that defined who I was at the moment. They realized, wow, he's suffering from something that they had no idea they suffered from, like that I was suffering from. And they had not been through it, so it wasn't familiar. You know, they had to take that step back and stop judging me, because at first they just thought I was somebody who was making, you know, horrible decisions. So then we took that step back, and, you know, he didn't really give me any type of advice or response right away. He had to really ponder on the subject. But when I told him and his fiance, I was terrified expressing everything. And like I said, I was worried about judgment. I was worried about guilt. I was worried about shame. I was worried about, you know, all of the things that came with it. And it was the best decision I could have made, period. Talking about it, till this day, is still the best decision. Since then, I've never been ashamed of talking about this. I can meet you, and the first conversation I have is to tell you what I've been through. And it's never to, like I said, get sympathy out of it. It's simply to express to people, because 9 times out of 10
conversations that you have with humans, 9 of them would have been gone through the same thing, or had gone through the same thing. But because they never felt comfortable enough to talk about it, they were still suffering about it. So I mention it now right off the bat so quick, and I'm so free to talk about it, because I want to make sure that when I am speaking about it, I don't get your sympathy back. I get your acceptance. Like, wow, this guy really has been through it all, and for some reason he still wants to spread love and light to the world. And I'm still trying to figure out that reason, because I've met other people who have been through similar or less than what I've been through, and they live their lives being destructive human beings. They're constantly trying to rip apart the world. And we're all different. We all learn different levels of things at different times. But these are the bad things that I did out of the suffering that I went through. And it wasn't fun. So eventually I came to the conclusion that the reason why I was so addicted to sex itself was because the sex that was inflicted on me to begin with. I was trying to get that pain out of me by fucking it out, and it wasn't working. Felt like it was working, but it wasn't. And the fact that I saw myself inflicting pain on other people satisfied me. It made me happy. It made me feel like I was processing my emotions, but I had no idea what emotions I was processing to begin with. So it was
more like
scary.
control over someone else's emotions.
Yeah, exactly. It made me feel like I had that control, like I gained that sense of power that is not a good power. I'm very grateful though that I didn't gain an obsession or a desire or want to go and... I'm so grateful that, that I didn't gain an obsession to want to be someone who inflicted rape upon someone else, because I've seen and met and heard people who were just touched or even looked at while they were naked as a child, and they went and caused, a rape infliction on somebody else because of what they went through, because that's
how they felt.
That's how they felt.
Some people, like you said, some people are different, Some people, all they need is that weird touch, or sense of just losing their identity, their control, their freedom, because someone else is taking it.
Yeah, that's exactly how some people get. It usually you become a product of your environment, but it's because we think we have to. It's because we weren't taught any better.
Yeah, and you got addicted to sex.
I did.
And there are those people that get addicted to raping or hurting other people.
Or substance abuse.
Exactly.
Because they're trying to drown out their pain. Yeah, they're trying to escape.
Yeah.
And I had my fair share with substance abuse as well. I went down a cocaine path and, promethazine whippets, things like that. I had my fair share, and I thought those things would drown out the pain. I thought those things would drown out the sorrow, and it was just a compilation of all the things I went through. But the biggest portion of my pain was the sexual abuse, and it wasn't until, like I said, I started facing it that I was able to see a different side of life. So we have two options as humans when we go through something like this, and the first option is what I just explained. We can go down this dark path and handle it in all dark ways, or we can go down the path that I chose to go down, which is all of the things that I'm about to mention. The good side of it is, after I talked about what happened, at first it wasn't as detailed, it wasn't as descriptive. It was simply, I went through something that I wouldn't wish upon anybody, and I wouldn't even tell them that it was sexual abuse. I just would tell them, like, just trust me, and they would see how my body reacted to talking about it. I would be shaking, I'd be cold for no apparent reason. I'd just get nervous, I'd get, shy, or I would get sick to my stomach because I didn't know how to open up. So at first it was little words here and there, and then eventually I finally said exactly what happened, and I said it out loud to myself. I looked myself in the mirror one day, and I went in a very rated R description. I told myself, you were raped, you were fucked by another person, like literally got that dark into it. And I didn't, at first, I felt like I was gonna throw up because I was saying these things, and I just
purging
yes,
them.
exactly. And,
wow.
And before I would say those, before I even mentioned those things in that much detail, it was always a video playing in the back of my head, and I would hear the screams, I would hear, all of the situation going down, I would feel it as if it was happening again. So I would live that nightmare every single day. But, because I grew up alone, I put up a wall around me, thinking that while Mike's not going through anything. He's strong. Like, he's always laughing, he's always joking. You know, I was always considered that comedian in all of my friends, all of my family. And, you know, I was always the jokester, the class clown, whatever the case was. But that's how I processed, was joking, turning everything into a joke. So yeah, those are like the different ways that I chose to cope on a negative aspect. Deep down inside, though, according to my mother, you know, I never met my father, but according to my mother, he was a hippie, someone who practiced meditation or dealt with chakras or tie-dye stuff all around. Like, that was her description of him. So it's just kind of ironic that I grew up to be this person when I never met my father, and I held so much like resentment towards him for, you know, the actions that he accused me of before he left my life. It's kind of just funny how I became, like, if not more spiritual as he was from what I was told. So it's funny, but you know, it was always destined for me to be this person, because even in my darkest moments, you know, because I've tried to attempt, and I contemplated many times suicide, and you know, it just wasn't meant for me to go down that path, because even in my darkest moments, I always saw the brightest, like, outcome. Even though it never felt like I was getting closer to that outcome, it never felt like I was going to live a different lifestyle or become a better person internally. It was always meant for it to happen for me, period. So, like I said, I dealt with these things in such a negative way, you know, eating habits too that were so, you know, disgusting. I was eating like 8-9 meals a day out of depression. Sometimes I wouldn't even eat at all. Constant masturbation. It was just bad. It was all these different things that were trying to keep me from actually facing my trauma. I was going to use the word reality, but it wasn't.
It doesn't define you.
It isn't my reality now. Mm-hmm. It doesn't define who I am now. So, you know, the biggest step, like I said, was journaling and meditation and yoga. And then it's always great to have someone that you can talk to on a deeper level, that understands you. And the thing is a lot of people don't like to talk about things. They like to shut everything out, and they like to act like
they're strong.
Yeah, and they feel like we said, they feel like it's a sign of weakness. But at the end of the day, there is nothing more stronger in the world than facing yourself head on and admitting your truth. It's, you know, it's not a default admitting these things. It's not a sign of weakness at all either. It's when you gain who you truly are, is when you take ownership of your actions and your past. Take ownership of your past. And that's the thing about all of these things, is they're in the past. They already happened. There's nothing I can do to reverse time. There's nothing I can do to take back the inflictions. There's nothing I can do to, you know, to provide some type of like karmic reaction towards these people. There's nothing in this world that I can do that will help me get that feeling out, because a lot of times when people are hurt, their first initial response is redemption. And it's not like right off the bat they're like, all right, I'm gonna get this fucker back. They don't think of those things, but it happens internally. Your body, your mind, your soul, and all of the things about us being angry think about how we can get back at these people. And I spent a lot of time doing that too. You know, I like what I would say or do to my father if I ever ran into him, or what I would say or do to the guy that hurt me and my mother, what I would say or do to my brother and sister's father for leaving them and causing the pain that they inflicted onto our family. You know, all of these different things that I would do and say.
And you healed all of that in the past too.
No, I've healed everything else besides the sexual infliction. It's been 8-9 year journey. It's been an 8 or 9 year journey was when I first started my like
with yoga, meditation,
internal, it's been about 8 or 9 years, and
okay.
That was all already stuff I worked on myself. The sexual thing was the biggest part of my life and that didn't come until the last 2, almost 3 years. And it's just because I woke up one day thinking I can no longer lie to myself. I started noticing that I was creating lies, not only internally but externally, to friends, to family, creating stories that didn't even exist, but because of the trauma that I suffered, I was creating an imaginary, like,
Other world,
you.
You.
Yeah, and another me that was suffering from different things. Which is also a blessing, because since I've been able to do that, I've been able to put myself in other people's shoes on a different level. I've been able to understand how I can overcome certain situations that I've never been through personally, so I can help people on, like, those subjects.
But now you've realized you just don't have to lie about it.
Exactly. I realized I didn't have to lie about it anymore, and I realized that
You just wanted
I didn't
to
have
relate.
to lie. Yeah,
You just wanted to feel
that's exactly it. I wanted. Also, there was a part of me too at the time that wanted to one up everyone. I wanted to one up everyone. You know, to show that, to create this, like, this false reality that, like, for instance, you told me that you grew up without a mother. Oh yeah, well, I grew up without a mother and a father, but the reality of it is I grew up without a father, and my mother was hardly around, but she was still around. But I wanted to show you that, oh, you're complaining about something so small. I'm just trying to let you know that people have it worse.
Wow.
But I've
You
noticed...
were angry. You were just
Yes,
angry.
exactly. And I noticed that when I would say things like that at first, people wouldn't really resonate, because, you know, I would say, oh, well, you're complaining about the loss of your mother or something, but somebody else grew up without their mother and father, and they live in a world where, where they have to, like pray for water to come because they don't have it. And when you try to tell people in that aspect of a comparison type of way,
like, not validating their feelings.
Yeah, you have to really try to connect with them on a personal level as if you went through it. Because then that's what I've noticed actually helps people on a better level. But, you know, I woke up and I realized a lot of things every day throughout that time, throughout my life, more and more things about myself that I was doing that were negative. And I've always been someone who's tried to get everyone's approval, and I've tried to prove myself to everyone. And it's just because I was always at the lowest part of the food chain when it came to my family. I was the one they didn't care about the most. I was the one every holiday that we had, I'd sat outside while they, you know, opened presents, and I would look into the window, and they would always tell me, you know, we have gifts for you, but we left them at home. And they would never come with those gifts. And obviously I know that the most important thing about the holidays is family, quality time.
You're a kid, though.
Yeah.
You're a freaking kid.
As a kid growing up, that was painful. And
to see other kids open presents, that's
especially
the worst.
with my like, I have a cousin whose birthday is on the 17th. Mine is on the 8th of March. It's an entire 9 days away. And they would always coexist our birthdays. And when we would show up, there would be tables filled with presents. But when it came down to opening presents, none of them were mine. It was all my cousins, all the fucking time. That's how it was. So I would sit there, like, as a child thinking...
Just feeling neglected.
Yeah, like, it was painful and it sucked. And you know, it was just, every time they messed up, because I lived in a house filled with all my cousins.
How old were you when it happened to you the first time, Michael?
What, the sexual abuse?
Yeah.
I was 10, 11. No, I was 13 because I ended up getting shingles right after. I got shingles and the doctor was so pissed off. Why is he so young? And shingles come from, if you don't know what shingles are, like, obviously it's more common in people who have already had the chicken pox. So I had the chicken pox, but shingles is brought up from an over amount of stress. And being that young, that stressed, my entire back was covered in it. My chest, I couldn't lay anywhere. Everywhere I'd walk, even without a shirt, it was just stinging and burning, and I was crying. And, you know, even suffering from that, we were still going through the abuse with my mom's ex-husband, and you know, it was hard. So I was pretty young when it happened, and you know,
and then you had your family trauma before that.
Yeah, a lot of my family trauma was before and during, and then you know, a good majority of, like, stuff happened after, you know, with losing people that I actually cared for in my family, things like that, you know. And
Because life is hard and not
yeah.
everyone stays here forever. So then you found yoga, meditation, journaling. How old were you? You said like 8 years ago.
I was probably about 16 or 17 when I started learning what meditation was.
Okay.
And then
I was around that age too.
Yeah, it was pretty young still. And then I had my miscarriage around 18 with my daughter's mom, and that, even though I was sexually abused, that was the hardest thing of my life. It was that. Because I wanted to be nothing more than a father. I knew what it was like to miss that feeling of having somebody like that.
And you guys knew the gender.
Yeah. Well, it was like a few days before the due date that we had the miscarriage, so it was full term pretty much, and we were supposed to have a boy, and that was the hardest thing till this day that I ever had to go through. I never wanted to lose that child. I wanted to be a father more than anything. But what came out of it is why I am who I am today. I met an amazing person who took me down a journey of psychedelics, mushrooms in particular to start off with. And, I never heard anything about it. I never realized what mushrooms were. I never heard anything about psychedelics or the benefits or, if there was anything bad about it. I was just in a place of pain and I wanted to shut it out. So
really you opened the door to
it opened the door to not shutting it out, to facing it.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm very blessed, because I've heard perspectives of people who've tried psychedelics and they've had horrible experiences.
I've heard that too.
And I sit there and I just wonder, how is that possible? I've never had that experience.
I think those people, regardless of what happens in their life, they just handle fear and pain differently.
Yeah, everyone
That's all
does.
it is.
And it's all based off of the generational process of how we're brought up from our parents and then their parents. Mm-hmm. Because, that's where it starts.
That's true.
That's exactly where it starts. We are raised to think that when we do something good, we get a reward out of it. When we do something bad, we get punished for it. But we're never raised to understand that we have options, that the choice is ours, and that we do not have to become our adversities. Like, we don't have to become those. We don't have to become the negative aspect of what they have to offer us. So, and then we're always forced to, growing up, every time I wanted to talk about something, I was always told I talked too much, or, that I was annoying, and it made me feel like I could never speak. I was never listened to. So when you're somebody who grows up like that, which a lot of people grow up like that, we never feel comfortable enough to talk to our parents or to talk to our loved ones, because we feel like
we overthink it. We overthink it, thinking they don't care, and we're gonna get judged. Mm-hmm. So then we start bashing ourselves for it.
And then we start bashing ourselves, and we start, going through that whole rigmarole of, one action leading to another. It starts off with, okay, you don't want to talk to me, so I'm not going to talk right now. Then it becomes a habit. Next thing you know, you're 30 days in and you just never really talk about anything. Mm-hmm. And that just becomes something that gets drilled into you. And, after 30 days, you build a habit. After 60, you build a routine. After 90, that's it. Like, it's just who you become. Yeah. So if you spend your life not even realizing that you're not doing the things that are going to benefit you, then
it's just going to be harder
to get out of it. Mm-hmm. But it's never too late regardless.
Yeah, it's not nothing's impossible.
You could be on your dying deathbed at 100 years old, and you still have an opportunity to turn your life around. That's the beauty about life, period, is, we're going to be put through adversities left and right. And even though I am where I am now, it's not going to end. There's going to be things that I'm going to have to go through from here on out. Yeah. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but at some point my mother's going to pass away before me. I'm going to have to deal with that. Yeah. I'm going to have to deal with picking up my sister and my brother from that aspect, because, they're not as strong as me compared to what I've been through. Like, they didn't have to suffer the same things that I suffered through. So
you'll be their rock.
Exactly. And that's why I try to build myself up more and more, because I feel like it's my obligation and my God-given duty to be someone who lifts people up. Because like I said from the beginning of the videos, you know, if it was meant for me to end my life or to continue to make these horrible decisions, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't even be welcomed into, you know, Altercall. I wouldn't be welcomed into your life. I wouldn't be welcomed into just anything that has to do with good, period.
You know, you were really, because we've Zoomed or we've FaceTimed before actually meeting in person today, but you gave me a whole different impression when I met you. I was just like, wow, like there's depth in this young man, you know? So it was really refreshing and I'm honored that you're even here and you are opening up, being vulnerable, but, you know, brave at the very same time.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you, after meditation, yoga, you grew up, you started learning, you started rewiring your brain, and then you met ReadingofLuz.
That was the biggest blessing of my life. Besides my daughter, that was hands down the biggest blessing I could ever ask for. And it was so funny because I got invited to his first event, and on an internal level, I didn't feel like I earned my spot to even speak during that event, which is in no way, shape, or form, like, I don't want anybody to take this wrong. Ryan and his company is nowhere near a type of company that would make you feel that way. This was just my own feeling. Like, they are so loving and so open and, you know, so, like, focused on just trying to help you find your truest potential. And that is why I believe in this company with everything I have. I will give everything I have for this company. But meeting him, I felt that. I felt intimidated because I felt like I was not good enough, but that stems from growing up my whole life trying to prove myself. And, you know, he finally just, I think he saw that, because then he asked me, you know, to share or to join, you know, breathwork session. And from that point on, for like the last 2 or 3 years, you know, he brought me into his events and he kept me around. And you know, it wasn't until this year that he finally was like, you know, I'm so grateful to like bring you onto the team, and that was the biggest blessing, was to be added to the team, because he saw my potential and I felt like I was noticed, and
you
I
deserve
felt
it.
I truly I'm still having a hard time, you know, comprehending it because it feels like a dream.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is in the most humble way possible, you're right, and I haven't admitted that yet, but you're right, I do deserve it because of everything that I've gone through, and I've worked like hard for this. I've worked my ass off. Every event I went to, I did out of the kindness and love of my heart, because I believe in this company. I believe in who they are and their mission statement. So it's amazing because, you know, the more you work on yourself internally, it's hard work, and a lot of people don't want to pick up that internal pen. They don't want to pick up that internal notebook, and they don't want to analyze their pros and cons of themselves. Humans focus more on analyzing pros and cons of everything and everyone else but themselves. So every time, you know, I went deep into myself, I would ask myself what I am doing good and what I feel like I'm doing bad, like with. And that's a huge thing that helped me personally, was doing that. And not only was I doing it internally, I actually sat there and I would write pros and cons of who I am and, you know, what I have to offer. And
I've done that.
And it's amazing. It's a great practice, because then at first you get intimidated because the con list is always going to be longer.
Yes,
because
so true.
We're our biggest critics, and we like to sit there and, you know, focus on more of the things we're doing wrong compared to what we're doing right. We don't like to show ourselves the recognition we deserve, because we're so used to being criticized and so used to being judged that we do it to ourselves. So that cons list is going to be a lot longer, and that's okay. That's fine. Go ahead and let your con list for the first month be 100 pages long. Doesn't matter. But each day that you create that pros and con list, I want you to focus on one thing from the con list that you can start working on for that month. So, for instance, one of my biggest cons was laziness. I would sit there and I have all the power in the world to make something of myself, but I would get lazy. And it's also combined with I'm very good with learning something. If you give me a task, no matter if I don't know it or not, I figure out pretty quick how to do it, and then I get it done quick as fuck. Like, there's no days for me to do it. It's literally an hour, and I'll get whatever I need done. Things that would take people weeks, months, I can get done.
Same.
So since I can do that, every task I picked up my whole life, like the moment I learned how to do it, and I knew how to do it from the front and back of my hand, I got bored. So I want to move on. I'd be like, all right, teach me something else. So
you just outgrow things
fast,
right? Yeah.
fast, and it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Like, I'm blessed that I learn things quick, but I'm cursed because I get lazy, not lazy, bored,
unmotivated.
Exactly, and I want to do something different. So when you do your pros and cons list, focus on that one aspect of one thing from that list. If it's 10 things, take one thing from that list and figure out how to put it on your pro list. Don't move on to anything else on that list until that one thing is moved to the other side. But while you're doing that, don't shame yourself with the ideas that, fuck, I have to work on not being lazy. I'm so lazy in this aspect. And you start criticizing yourself on a deeper level, so it makes it harder to overcome that. Focus on the things that your pros. Focus on those and be grateful for those. Show gratitude, appreciation, and love towards the pro side, because those pro sides, all of the things on that pro sides, like, can be utilized to help you knock out one thing at a time.
But what about those people that are like pros? I can't even think about a pro. What would you tell them?
If you're somebody who doesn't have a pro side, then that should just be more of a reason for you to work on your cons even harder. There's a pro in everyone, whether they see it or not. Like, you can sit there and be someone who doesn't think that they're pro, but the reality of it is like, people will mix up something like being a pro with being cocky. So they'll be like, oh, I'm cocky about this, so I'm going to put it on the cons.
Themselves.
But it's not you being cocky. If you're confident in something that you know you're good at, there's no shame in putting that on a pro
Not
list.
even just good at, but makes you happy, you can really relate to and feel like it defines you. Yeah.
If it's something that makes you feel comfortable, even if you think it's bad in somebody else's eyes, let go of the biggest critic, and that's yourself. Get out of your own way and create a pro list, because there is
even
pros.
if I'd like to say that even if people can't think, even still, you know, just imagine, what would you like if you can create and alter you, you know, that is more positive. Make something up.
And it's beneficial to have these types of conversations too, especially if you don't feel like you have pros. If you're really struggling to figure out what your pros are, go and ask somebody that's closest to you.
I love that.
Because one thing I've learned about conversations is the more I conversate with people about their healing or my healing, the more I learn about my own healing and what I need to progress in and where I can step up at. So it's very, very good to be able to have someone you can talk to. And, you know, being in the audience, if you don't have somebody you can talk to, like, both of us are open for that.
Yeah.
Like, our messages are open all day for that. And, you know, I would, and I'm sure you as the same, would never shame anybody for coming to us for advice. You know, it's who we are and what we're destined to do. And at the end of the day, you can create a bigger pro list than you can cons. But that was one of the biggest things that helped me, was that pro and con list internally. And I was amazed by all of my cons, and then I was even more amazed at how much more quicker I was able to turn those cons into pros by just even admitting that I had these cons. And even whether that was out loud to myself or to a loved one or just even through pen and paper, I was amazed by that. So it helped me in a very, very big way. A lot of, you know, people feel like it's a silly thing to do and it's stupid to do, but it's very important. Spend an hour of your time looking at yourself in the mirror, having a conversation. It could be the stupidest thing possible. It could be the funniest thing or the saddest thing or the happiest thing to you. Spend that time talking to yourself.
You know, it's really hard, I think, especially now these days, to really face yourself, like you said, because now with the world of technology, it's so easy to escape. It's so easy to distract yourself, procrastinate, you know. So what if someone's trying to do the 1 hour, like maybe a timer that would help?
You can even start off smaller. You don't have to do the 1 hour.
Okay.
5 minutes. There's nothing wrong with taking small steps for big gains. Like,
yeah.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, I tell people with journaling, I'm like, you don't have to write an essay, just start off with a sentence for the day.
Yeah.
That's it.
Or you can even, if you're someone who likes to draw, you can draw like emojis of how you're feeling. You could be that simple, or a stick figure, smiley face, or a sad face. It doesn't have to be an obsessive amount of stuff that you put down or do. Start small, because all of those small things will add up to getting you to the fundamental goal, to the real portion of where you're trying to get to. So it doesn't have to be big. It can definitely be small. You could do 1 minute, 2 minutes, but every few days, progress the time, progress the amount of effort, progress the amount of work that you're putting into yourself.
Yeah. That's good.
It's extremely important. But like I said, doing a pros and cons list is a big thing for me. Conversations with people that I trust to give me the best advice back. It's very, very important to find a mentor as well. Somebody that you look up to, somebody that inspires you to do something that makes you happy. Doesn't matter what the thing is that makes you happy, as long as you're doing it. But obviously it's better if that thing that makes you happy is going to benefit other people.
Yeah.
It's better. But if it doesn't and it only benefits you, that's perfectly fine, because you can't love anybody else if you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
You can't offer advice, you can't offer a lending hand or a hug or love to anybody if you don't love yourself, because then it just doesn't come off as real or authentic. And at the end of the day, we don't have enough realism or authenticity coming from people. So pros and cons lists, conversations with people, a mentor, somebody that you can look up to that actually inspires you to be better. And even though people see other people that are rich and famous, automatically they get intimidated and they think, oh, if I try to message this person, they will never answer me. How do you think I got a hold of Ryan? Every single chance I got, I tried to show myself. I tried to arise up in his day somehow, some way, some shape or form. You, with consistency and belief within yourself, you will be able to work with your mentor. You'll be able to get closer to the person that really inspires you, but you have to put in the effort. And if I was to sit there and put in the effort every day sending him a message, but I wasn't doing the internal work, you think he would answer me? No, he would never answer me. They gotta see who you really are as a person, and you gotta show that. And the best way to show that is to show yourself your love. And these are different things that helped me. Obviously podcasts is important. Fill your day up with other people that are in the same type of subject that you're trying to progress in, or you're trying to become better at. So for instance, I want to be a speaker, so I watch nothing but speakers all day to try to progress how I speak, or how I communicate with people, to not only be the speaker, but also to let them know I'm a listener too. I'm not just someone who goes on and on and on. I do take into consideration what other people have to say. So it's important that you do that. You shadow the people that you want to become. And what people don't understand is, one of the bad things about this is, for instance, somebody wants to be a musician, but all they're doing is listening to people like Tekashi 6ix9ine or whatever the case is, in the new aspect of rap. It's all mumble rap, and all they talk about is murder this, drugs that, and overdosing or killing themselves. And a lot of people are resonating with it because of the pain that they're going through. But what people don't understand is what you watch, what you listen to, what you pay attention to, what you spend your time on, you allow yourself to take, to become.
Yeah.
So that's vital. That's a key. That's important, because a lot of people don't realize it. You can sit there and watch TV all goddamn day and you're thinking you're getting something out of TV, but reality of it is you're becoming all the emotions that come with whatever you're watching, and then you're also becoming a couch potato because you're just spending so much time literally connected to your device.
Yeah.
So there's a good aspect and a bad aspect to everything. If you want to become better, surround yourself with things that are going to provide better energy for you.
Law of attraction.
Exactly. And it's real. And speaking of law of attraction, it's becoming more and more scientifically proven that we do have energy fields. It says that our energy, fields expand past our physical body, and that's why we're able to feel people who are next to us and what they're going through without even touch or going into their internal.
Abraham. Esther Hicks calls it the vortex.
Yeah. Everyone has their theory on it, and it's, fact of the matter is it's real. We're light. We are light and energy, and
vibrating in different frequencies through our chakras.
And exactly. And whatever energy that we choose to focus on is how we will perceive ourselves on the outside. You can change your physical form. There's reasons why there are heavy set people, medium-sized people, and skinny people. There's a reason why there's tall people and short people. It's how we perceive our energy. And obviously a lot of us are born this way, but I've done a personal experiment on myself where I spent a good majority of a year focusing on nothing but negative, and I did that for a reason, because I really wanted to see. I'm more of I have to see and go through to believe it kind of person, compared to you just tell me and I'll believe you right off the bat. I'm not somebody who likes to do that. I'd rather go through the experience myself. So I spent a good majority of a year once where I focused on nothing but negative, and I took pictures of myself and within every aspect, and then I went the rest of the year focusing on nothing but greatness, and then I took pictures of myself, and you can see the transformation in my facial features, my body features, my energy, my structure of my what's it called, posture, and the difference between it's real. It's very, very real that the things we focus on we become, and we can literally see it within the body. You get baggy eyes, or acne because you're overstressed, or wrinkles in the face, or whatever the case was that happened to me at the time. But these things are real. So focus on how you're spending your time, the energy that you're allowing within yourself, and it's time. I think it's time in everyone's life. It's been a long time coming, but I think it's especially time now that we have to take ownership of who we are and what we can accomplish, because if not, then there's really not a chance for this world. And I think we owe it to ourselves to give us a chance to stop being too hard on ourselves.
Especially now these days, where we need it the most. People are so disconnected from one another now these days, And
everything's based off of a like nowadays. Because the one thing that we want the most out of every human period is validation. Validation or recognition. It's pretty much two of the same things. But these are the things that we want the most in our life. So we get discouraged when we post something and it gets 5 likes today and then 100 likes tomorrow. We get discouraged, so we think that because only 5 people liked it, I'm not good enough. Everyone's so into the idea and aspect of trying to become TikTok famous or social media famous because people are becoming rich off of it. So obviously we're turning more into a virtual world, because they're creating things like the metaverse and trying to put people into a false reality. And that's just because they're just trying to figure out different ways.
Because you can create yourself however you want in the other reality, and it kind of makes you forget who you are here and forget to face who you are here.
That's exactly.
That's why it's gonna get so big. It's
already big, and it hasn't even fully they're already making gloves that allow you the ability to physically feel what's in the metaverse and what's in your false reality. And it's crazy because it's just how humans are starting to, choose how to live, and it's because they don't want reality. But the reality of it is we only get this one life, and the only thing we are promised and guaranteed is death. It's going to come for us all, at least in the physical form, form. And I'm someone who believes in another like opportunity and an afterlife or elevation when it comes to your soul and your lights, because I've seen things personally that would blow people's minds.
Same.
And I've been through experiences. So
Same.
the thing is
there's no doubt when it comes up to
there's
that.
no doubt, and the fact that I know that because I've been through it proves to me that why am I going to waste another second focused on emotions that are brought up from past infliction
or society.
or society, and I don't want to spend or waste another second in those, or like giving energy to those things, because at the end of the day, when I always ask myself, at the end of the day, if I was to die and I'm facing our creator, God, whatever the case was, if I'm facing myself at the end of my life and the question comes up, were you happy with the life you lived? And if I have to second guess that, and I have to literally wait, or there's a pause in between for a reaction, I wasted my life. I don't want that opportunity. I want, for when the time comes for me to pass on, that I do it freely and effortlessly, because I'm okay with dying. I don't want to die, like obviously before I did, but
Same.
the more beauty I found in life and within myself and what it has to offer, the more I realized that, like, I love this opportunity and I'm going to try to love every day. Obviously, I'm human, I have my struggles. There's days where I want to take a mental health day and just allow myself to be sad, and that's
to self-reflect.
Yeah, to self-reflect or to feel those emotions, and I'll allow myself to think of all the things that would cause me to feel sad, just to feel sad. But then I always come out of it the next day like, all right, time to get back to work. Like I was able to do some self-pity in a way, and give myself that time, and then I move forward. But by doing that, it also shows me where my weaknesses are and where I could progress internally and mentally. Because at the end of the day, no matter what we go through, it's a mental game.
We're constantly downloading new information, learning about ourselves. We're constantly evolving.
Yeah, we
So
are.
it's like we're not who we were even a week ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it comes down to the mind, and the mind is the most powerful tool in the entire universe in creativity, period. So, the stronger we become with it, the better, like, things we receive in return. And I don't ever want people to get the idea that I give a helping hand because I'm expecting something in return. Obviously, yes, I expect to be respected or acknowledged or appreciated. I expect those things because I deserve them, damn it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and give you my entire life and then you just take it for granted. Like, that hurts me, obviously, but I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'll go handle that hurt by myself. If you're somebody who... a very smart person told me once, and it's a kind of a funny thing to like bring up, but somebody owed him money, and I asked him, like, what are you gonna do about it? And I was expecting, being the person that he was, that he would say, I'm gonna go fuck them up. I've had many friends that when somebody owed him money, the first reaction was to go and cause harm or to try to like steal something from them or whatever the case was, to get even, or whatever the case was. And his reaction changed my response to everything in life from that day on. I asked him, well, you're not gonna like do anything about it? And he said, I put it this way, I see it as they're paying their way out of my life. They're paying me to leave my life. He's, I'll never respond to them again. He's all, that's simple as that. He's all, why go and stoop to another level? He's all, it's materialistic item. Sure, I'm down money, but he's all, I've gained more power within myself by simply cutting them out.
Yeah.
It's that simple. People think
that money is more.
And not even just money. 100% of the times, people struggle the most common thing we struggle with is relationships, because we never want to be alone. We always want to have somebody with us, because we feel like we need somebody to show us that comfort. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, fuck, everyone likes to be held by somebody. Everyone likes to be shown appreciation by somebody, or to fall asleep next to somebody. It's just natural.
That's why love heals, because it's so powerful.
And that's why love is people ask me my religion, I say love. It's simple as that.
I love that.
It's the only thing that I know is real. And when you mention it to most people, they're like, well, fuck love. Love didn't offer me anything. No, that's not true, because every day we fight for love. It's the one thing we want the most. But unfortunately, we're not given love in the ways that matter the most. So the biggest thing for humans is relationships. When we're in one and we think we love someone, it causes this problem or this idea that we can't let go of that person because we're still attached to them. That person can be abusing you all day. They can beat your living ass all day. Like, they could do so many things to you all day, but because we're so afraid of being alone, we're so afraid of facing our own and obtaining love for ourselves, that we just hold on to things that don't serve us. So I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me and we've had our one-on-one sessions, and the biggest problem, most common problem, is relationships. Well, I love this person, but these are all the things that they're doing to me. And then when they tell me the things they love about them, it's never authentic reasons. It's always just because these are the things that they're lacking in their own life, and they feel like this person's filling it. But the reality of it is they were never filling those spots. They were just filling the void of being alone. They just, it was a physical person or a physical object for you to have in your life. And, you know, it just makes it harder for people to move on. But we have to get to a point in our lives where if they're not serving us, we have to see it. Doesn't matter if it's going to make us feel like shit because we made them feel like shit. That person didn't care about you in the beginning to make you feel like shit from the get-go. So if you know this and you know it, you got to get rid of what the heart feels. Like, obviously the heart and the mind are the two most powerful tools, and you need them both to coexist with each other. And I'm not saying to be heartless. That's the last thing I want people to become, is heartless, because a lot of people do that. They say, like, for instance, a lot of New Year's resolutions this year was, I'm going to focus on myself. And I would reach out to people who I saw post that, and I'd be like, I'm so proud to hear that you're focusing on yourself. And their responses were, fuck everyone else, I've been hurt so much. And that's a negative way of handling things. If you're going to focus on yourself, you have to become so selfless that it's selfish. And vice versa. You have to become so selfish it becomes selfless. Because at the end of the day, every person that treats you wrong, it's not because of them. It's because of how you truly are on the inside. But it's also not because of who you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's many factors. How you were brought up, you know, because some, like you said, those people that do cause harm, or, you know, are just different than us, love different than us, live life, even think differently. It's all because of how they were brought up, their ancestors, and then how their parents and their ancestors were brought up. I mean, we're talking about many generations here, and it's, most of it, having no technology, no way to communicate with others, or even know where other people are mentally, because now we can see where everyone's minds are at because of content. But yeah, it's definitely conditioning, habits, just mental patterns.
There's a book, I think I mentioned it to you before, but I don't know if you've actually read it, The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. It's one of the first books I read thoroughly. I have a lot of books, but this was the first book I've ever read front to back and took away from it. Like, I really learned from this book. And if you haven't read it, like, I suggest to read it ASAP.
I should read it again. I read it, but it was years ago.
Book. And this comes back to how people treat you. A lot of the times when people treat you horribly, our first, internal instincts is to get offended by it and then start questioning ourselves. So if somebody caused pain on me, obviously my first thoughts were like, what did I do to deserve this? Why am I such a piece of shit? Or like, whatever the case was, we start bashing on ourselves. And one of the agreements is to not take anything personal. And it goes into depth as to why. And one of the biggest things I learned from it, there's obviously more when it comes to not taking things personal, which is one of the agreements, is because when somebody treats you a certain way, there's two causes, which we said. One is because of who we are on the inside, that's what we're attracting. But the most important one, which is more common than the other one, is how that person was raised, what that person is going through. And this helped me forgive the person who sexually abused me, because I had so much hatred, so much resentment, so much anger towards this person, and I could never figure out why. And then I thought they didn't deserve my forgiveness. And when I read this book, I realized, because he says when somebody treats you a certain way, it has nothing to do with who you are. It's simply because of what they're going through. Maybe they're having a bad day, or they had a bad life, or a bad week, or they just had a bad moment. And they didn't know.
Miguel has a chokehold.
Yeah, and they didn't know how to. They didn't know how to like react. And since they're so used to reacting in their natural ways, then we take it so personal, and we take it straight to heart. So then we think people like are fucked up. But the reality of it is people are really amazing when shown appreciation, when believed in, when supported, and when not like put in a serious amount of stress. Like, we can accomplish the greatest of things. Think about how far we've come from caveman days till now. It started off with a rock and a stick to break things up, or to cut our own wood, and now we have giant machines that do it. Like, we
That's
evolve.
so true. Yeah, and we're gonna continue to evolve.
Looking for a pen. We evolve, and it's a beautiful book, because it teaches you, not to take anything personal, and the reasons why. And because of that book, I was able to really evaluate why I was so angry with the pain that was inflicted upon me and my body. And I was able to make a pros and cons list of the things I was telling myself because of this situation, and what it was causing, and it was just a great way to evaluate myself, and a great way to learn how to forgive this person. And I didn't forgive him because I felt like they deserved it. I forgave him because I knew I deserved to live my life without them still having a hold on me. Because even though that person is no longer in my life, he's been in prison for so many years, he still had power over me. He was still in control. He was winning every day, even though he got raped in prison, even though he got beat up in prison, even though these things happened to him, I still didn't feel good about it. I felt even guiltier, because I hoped something like that would happen to him. Then it happened. Then I realized I never want that to happen to anybody, not even an inflictor.
Yeah.
So I was able to forgive, because I knew I deserved it. I knew I deserved to let go of that pain, and I knew I was able to, I deserved to live without accusing myself of it, to live without all that weight. And that book was really the reason why I was able to forgive. And then it also taught me how to be truthful. Like I said from the beginning, I used to lie about things, and one of the agreements is impeccability, to be impeccable with your word, meaning no matter what, whether it's externally to someone else or internally to yourself, to always be truthful. And it's a very important rule. Never take anything personal. Do everything with 100%. Don't ever do things half-assed, because you're never going to get the best results out of it if you do things half-assed. So I've had my fair share of ups and downs, but because of the work that I put in, and because I actually put the work in, a lot of people say, which is I think this is the most important factor of all this content that we just got. A lot of people I come across say meditation doesn't work for me, yoga doesn't work for me, journaling doesn't work for me. And I know that's a lie, because they did not sit there and actually put 100% into it. They
And
sat
stay
there and they did it
consistent.
half and stay consistent.
Like have a goal with, the science says we only need 17 days to build a habit for our brain to start connecting neurons and create a habit. 17 days, that's all we need.
Yeah, it's
So it's
getting
not
shorter.
even a whole month.
It's getting shorter. It's funny because we instill the memory instantly, but we forget it instantly.
Yeah.
So then we think, oh, I don't know how to do this. So then 17 days, obviously, just like anything. Like your firstborn, you have to learn how to crawl. You gotta train yourself. The first couple crawls are just rocks back and forth. Like that's it. And then once we get used to that, we're like, okay, now I know how to do this. Let's see what else I can do. Boom, we move the hand and then we move the other. And the more we do things, the better we become at it. That's why practice makes perfect. Even though perfect is a false reality, there's no such thing as perfect, because we're always going to be better than the person we were yesterday. No matter how much we practice something, we're always going to get better. So it's amazing how people can sit there and say, I don't think these things work because they didn't work for me before. Well, are you actually taking the time to allow yourself to be in this moment, to actually sit there and think about it and process it? And a good majority of people will throw on a meditation, and because their mind doesn't shut up, they think it doesn't work. But that's not the purpose of meditation. It's not. The purpose of meditation is to hear yourself, to listen to
I
what
was
you're
listening
saying.
to a Alan Watts video today, and he was talking about meditation. Do you know who Alan Watts is?
Of course.
Yeah, great.
Of
But he was saying meditation is not about telling yourself who you are. Oh, I'm staying still, I am quieting the mind. He's like, it's not about that. Then you're not meditating. You're somewhere else. He's like, meditation is being right in the present moment. And of course, breath work goes into that too. But yeah, I feel like people have a hard time with it because some people are like, well, I tell myself all these good things, but it doesn't work. It's like a constant battle. Meditation doesn't feel good. It's, if anything, it makes me anxious. Or, I've talked to people like that too. Or even I've felt like that sometimes, where I've caught myself meditating and I'm like, why is this not working? And then I'm like, because I'm not here. I'm not here in the present moment. Like, let everything go. Before I read, I try to center myself. And it's kind of like meditation, before you find that frequency that you're just going to let out. But yeah, like it's super, super difficult. But I do want to thank you for being here.
It's been a pleasure to be here. It's been a pleasure to, share my experience. Hopefully we get, more of these experiences to share. That's something I want to set out to do.
I would love that. If it may, well, you in general, but I mean, like, maybe one day we can do this again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll definitely make it happen. And then just remember, the two most important words when it comes to meditation is surrender and presence. I would say 3 words: patience. Be patient with yourself and surrender. And once you surrender, then it'll do its work for you. Face yourself head on, and never be afraid to talk about things. Never be afraid to show who you truly are. If someone's not going to like it or they're going to judge you, then let that be them. Let that be who they are. And you be you. And that's what I would have to say to the world. And like I said, I'm very grateful that we had this opportunity. I'm grateful for you having me and to have this conversation and to open up about it. And hopefully this message touches the hearts of many, many people and shows them that they can open up too, and that they can reside, if not in people they love, in us, or just themselves. I think it's important. But it's been a blessing.